morning. Thanks everyone for being here. Let me just address the elephant in the room. They sent me here not because I'm Italian and we're in the headquarters of pizza. I just want to get through that real quick. I was hoping that joke would land. But Gina Cavallo, Chief Revenue Officer at Audigent. Diversity and inclusion is very important to us. We are actually 65% diverse. I myself, this is my third year. I did start our ERG, first for women, and actually it's a blueprint that our HR department has rolled out into creating different ERGs for the company. Even though we're not human resources, I do think that it's really important to have different centers for folks to have support throughout the organization. So at the core, very close to the core of very close to my heart, and so very happy to be here. And I will introduce Laura from Georgia Pacific, and some of my favorite brands. I mean, I was saying before, don't you judge people that have one ply and not the Angel Soft? you know you do. Anyways, let me kick it over to Laura, who's going to tell us a little bit about her background and her role at Georgia Pacific, and we'll get kicked off.
So first of all, I'd like to say the last panel did their job. I was over there eating my very healthy raw almonds and watching all the pictures of pizza and feeling very regretful about it. But looking forward to lunch. So I'm Laura Knebusch. I am head of marketing and consumer experience for Georgia Pacific Consumer Products. So we make brands in household essential categories like Brawny and Sparkle paper towels, Angel Soft and Quilted Northern bath tissue, Dixie plates and cups, and Vanity Fair napkins. I lead our marketing capabilities, so we support our retail brands and our B2B brands in achieving marketing objectives through insights, creative, media, shopper marketing and promotions, data-driven marketing, and analytics.
Just a little bit, just a few things. I think let's start with the basics, because before we get into sort of how you address diversity and inclusion within your strategy, let's start at the core, right? The consumer is always at the center of our marketing strategies, or we should be. Tell us a bit about how you identify and build out the understanding of who your consumers are.
Absolutely. So I took on this role in the middle of the pandemic, and I think there's most days when I can come home and it's been a bad day, and I can be like, well, it's just toilet paper, no one really cares, it's fine. But during the pandemic, it wasn't just toilet paper, it was, we realized we're what many would consider an essential and more of a commodity product, the role it really did play in consumers' lives. And a lot of times we like to talk to each other and be like, there's an emotional benefit there, and that just validated there is more, it is more than just, kind of softness or strength. It is providing a deeper benefit in consumers' lives. And so as we came out of the pandemic, knowing the consumer is first and foremost of everything we need to do, we really wanted to undergo understanding of our consumer targets, either validate that our consumer targets, we're still have the same kind of needs and wants, but also really look at redefining if we needed to. And then we look at our brand strategies and say, are brands delivering that benefit that those consumers really need? And so to do that, we did a couple different, tactics. First we underwent omnichannel consumer journey mapping. So this was something we hadn't done before, but knowing not just how much the consumer changed, but shopping, their usage and interaction with brands, with digital. We really wanted to make sure we had a better understanding of that journey, understand where they were making decisions, where they had pain points, and where we could develop strategies to help make our brands more relevant or reduce friction. So we did that, but that's really a foundational piece of research that we can continue to go back to over time. To overlay that, we really need to have a more, I won't say real-time, but I will say right-time data and analytics program where we can leverage our own first-party data and other data sources in addition to some more frequent and ongoing measurement to help continue to inform our understanding of the journey, our consumer targets, and their needs across the journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So let's talk about specifics. Everyone loves a good story. I know I do. What's a great home run example of one of your marketing brands?
Sure. I think the one I highlight today is Angel Soft. I know they're all perfect. They're all my babies, of course. So I could tell you a story about each of them. But I think what Angel Soft has done, again, kind of coming out of the pandemic, our Angel Soft consumer is Rose. And we do have a persona for each of our consumers because we want to be able to drive that connection and empathy with them. Rose, not a surprise, busy mom, but a mom who's got kids, but most likely is in a multi-generational household. She is more likely to be Hispanic and African American. She is often on a budget and she's making choices. So she's optimistic, she wants to do the right thing for her family every day, but she does have to evaluate trade-offs, and she can't have failure, she can't, she doesn't want things to be overly complicated. So as we think about what AngelSoft can do for Rose, she needs balance and simplicity. And AngelSoft is soft and strong at the right value, at the core of it. So we basically brought to life the idea of soft, strong, simple. She doesn't have to make choices, she doesn't have to think too hard about it. We should be one thing that is easier in her day because she has a lot of things that she can focus on. And then we brought that to life because it's a very, very simple message, but we brought it to life in a really engaging way. We created a whole new animated world of AngelSoft Inc., which is brought to life crafted in the cloud. So AngelSoft Inc. lives in the clouds. It's run by the CEO Angel and her band of supporters and workers at AngelSoft Inc. And their mission is to create that softness, that simplicity, the softness and strength. And I think as you look, it's animated, as you look at AngelSoft, as you look at those who are supporting her, you can start to see the diversity reflected in our consumer base as well. And the other big change we made at the time was AngelSoft, we say pre-pandemic, we were still heavily TV. And so we made a pretty big shift into the digital space, which has allowed us, again, to, while we're still, toilet paper is a pretty fast reach category, you need to make sure you do have your broad reach tactics. But it allowed us to also be a lot more targeted as we thought about when and where and how we could interact with Rose. So we're moving more into online video, into social, and retail media, and streaming audio. And sorry, no. So the end result is actually really positive. We've had great brand results. Equity metrics have moved. Sales have been very positive. We just brought AngelSoft in store onto pack, or Angel, the character on pack. And then we also just won a Reggie Award. So we feel really good about kind of that holistic campaign, how it's addressed Rose's needs, but really related to her in a way.
And did you find that media mix, there was any insights out of sort of testing and moving from linear or to television into different channels?
Absolutely. I mean, what we were seeing was certainly the shift in usage. And again, while that had been happening, we've been tracking it. TV had been very effective for us, and we were a little reluctant to make that move into some newer channels that we had less data about. But we saw where she was spending her time, and we also knew, again, we needed to make things as simple as possible, and we needed to meet her where she was. And we also saw the ability to tell the story in different creative ways as we thought about the different digital media. So we started shifting our mix 2021, and we've kind of wide path, we're about 50% now as we think about digital versus video.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. I mean, we say it on Audigent all the time, not to plug passion. But you have to have, you have the best data strategy, you have the best media mix, but the best creative. Those things have to work together. You can't have one of those pieces missing, otherwise you've got great creative and right data, but it's in the wrong place. And so all of those pieces sort of have to work together to hit it home. So let's talk a bit about inclusion and culture, why we're here today. Tell us about Georgia Pacific and your commitment to inclusive marketing and gender equality.
Absolutely. So, I mean, this is something that's been a passion for me personally, and it's something that we've seen really, I'm really excited to see how it's evolved in our organization. And again, it comes back to the consumer. The U.S. population is increasingly diverse. Our consumer targets are becoming increasingly diverse. We know that consumer expectations is that they see themselves, their friends, their communities reflected in advertising, reflected in brand values. But they are also saying that they aren't seeing that actually happening, and they are making choices because of it. So we really started on a mission to improve the inclusivity and cultural sensitivity of our marketing and our media mix to ensure that we were being relevant to our consumer, and whether it's in a kind of a general market or a more hyper-targeted area, and that we felt that was kind of the right thing to do for the consumer. But if it's the right thing to do for the consumer, it's the right thing to do for the brand. Very much going.
Absolutely. And in terms of just overall culture, because I think the strategy sound. I think also when you think about just Georgia Pacific as an organization, within your own team, what sort of things do you do to bring diversity and inclusion within your organization?
Yes, so it's been a journey, and we probably started 5+ years ago, and we really started more from I would say, gender inclusivity, and we partnered with the ANA, and they have a program called Seeker, and we were one of the founding partners of Seeker, and it was really about driving the accurate portrayal of women in media and marketing, knowing the purchasing power that they have. It sounds good, but there were probably some people in the company who were like, should we really be spending kind of extra time and resources on doing that? So we did a benchmarking, that they had a measurement they used called GEM, and what we came back is we saw we were average. So you could look at that and be like, all right, we're not horrible. That's not bad. We really want to go and spend a lot of time on this. But when you looked underneath it, you saw, well, that was because we had brands who were going really well, and some brands who were going really poorly. And that said, we did not have a consistent understanding of what we were trying to do internally, and that we had kind of the impetus and the urgency to try and drive this change within the organization. So the key thing we did, one is we partnered with experts. We continued to partner with ANA at the time, but other experts as well, to bring in tools and processes that we could integrate into how we work every day. This isn't an this isn't a check after the fact. These are processes that we've got integrated into our briefing, into our creative evaluation, into how we evaluate media, to make sure that we're thinking about this and driving awareness of unconscious bias, but also driving awareness of any even big missteps we can be taking along the way. So that's been kind of the biggest thing, is actually integrating it into processes so people just get trained on this is just how we do it as they come into the organization. The other, I think, really important factor was having the ability, setting KPIs. Some of them are quantitative and some of them are qualitative. Sometimes it can be hard to really say, are we doing a good job in this space? So we had to put KPIs. People had to know what good looked like, so that they knew what the expectations were as we tried to reach them. And so we were able to do that through both, I would say more quantitatively through our creative testing. It's a little bit more qualitative as we think about kind of our media mix. But having that and being able to see that progress over time, those have been the things that have made this so important to making this just, again, part of how we work every day versus something that feels like a separate initiative.
And in terms of KPIs, both in marketing and internally, how has that impacted your business? Any great examples of success you've seen on the brand side or internal?
I think we can look at a lot of success, and I'll even go back to AngelSoft.
Are you just doing that because it's my favorite?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
And Angel's really cute, so yes. Yes, we had to make sure that we had to start from the human truth. Like we're always saying we're starting from the consumer and the insight, but one of our biggest things is that it truly has to be a consumer truth, human truth that is resonant across, I'd say, multiple groups. Because while we are able to be more targeted in some aspects of our media, usually in our general market media and our TV, we are going to be kind of, it's a broader reach. So we really want to make sure that insight was something that really related, across our entire target. But then we see that we do the different metrics that we're using in our copy or creative testing that help us understand when we do better on those metrics, those inclusivity metrics, we see a higher potential for purchase. And so we know that those are directly correlated. So I think we can say we've seen it and how it can impact our business. And then I say just what it's done for the organization, the way it allows us to have better conversations earlier. We are holding ourselves accountable to this. It's the right thing to do, and so it feels good to do it. I would say a lot of members on my team, just when we talk about it, they're like, oh, this just makes me just excited. This is something important to us. And so just from the organizational standpoint, it drives fulfillment. And it's something that we have ongoing conversations with senior leadership. And I think that's really important too, that they are not just aware, but supportive and driving the message as well.
I think it's so important too, right? I think even on the sales side, it's always important to have other perspectives, look at the numbers in terms of the most profitable businesses now. So it's the businesses that actually have diverse perspectives and teams. So it's really, really exciting to see how you implement that. This is my favorite question. What are the advice you give to other marketers about getting involved, leaning in, specifically advancing the stature of women and girls in marketing and advertising? Love to hear sort of what would you tell the group?
Yes, it's a great question. Like I said, we've been on this journey for a couple years, and we are not done, and we will never be done. Like there's not a perfect ending, and everyone is doing it well. So it's a continuous process and continuous improvement. We actually have a session, another what we call inspiration session next week in our office to continue to help bring forward best practices to the organization. So the first thing is start. If this is important to you, just start somewhere. I think it can be really intimidating, and I think in today's world where if you make a step, it feels like that can have some pretty dramatic consequences. But I truly believe that this is something authentic to your consumer, and it's something authentic to your brand and your company. You're not going to take a wrong step, but it needs to be something that's integrated into how you work versus just an activation. And so I know some people are nervous about how do I do this within my company, but just start. And we started by partnering with experts because we were we wanted to make sure we were making the right moves. And there's a lot of different experts or peers. I think you're all going to get a lot of peers today who might be kind of having different efforts in this area. So leverage experts, leverage peers. But then the other key thing is build it into how you work every day. Don't make this an and. Because if it's an and, sometimes it can be easily forgotten, or it can make it not feel like it's integral to how you do business or how you're going to do good marketing. So build it into your processes, and then have KPIs. Hold yourself accountable, because I truly believe if you're not measuring what you're doing, again, you're not going to drive to the success you need to.
Yeah, that's super important, right? It's not about posturing, it's about actually driving results. Do you have any mentorship programs within Georgia Pacific that you support diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, diversity is built into, I would say, the core of our management philosophy. It's called principle-based management, which is basically how do you deliver good business results? Is you have to have diversity of thought, diversity of experience, and that is built into every aspect of how we recruit, how we train, how supervisors are trained, and how we evaluate. So instead of having separate resources, we actually are more focused on making sure it's built into the DNA of everybody in the company of how important it is to make sure we have that diversity of thought to get to make sure we're challenging ourselves and get to the most innovative and informative answers.
That's amazing. Sounds like a great place to work. Final question for you is, there's so much evolution in the market. If you go on LinkedIn, it's almost blinding. How do you keep up with things and trends? And what sort of specific information do you use to sort of stay on top of this ever-changing landscape, not just in D&I, but in tech? Any advice on sort of how you keep yourself ahead of the curve?
Yes, it's a great question. It is overwhelming, and I wish I had enough time in the day. There's so much good information out there. I wish I had the time in the day to be able to leverage it all. So I certainly use Audigent, I use industry groups, I use their blogs I listen to. But at the end of the day, maybe this is kind of particularly at my level too, my peer networks I've found to be gotten the most benefit out of really usable, actionable insights. And so whether it's things like brand innovators or other groups I'm part of, or just connected to other marketers in the city, the ability to call someone and say, how are you thinking about this? Do you have some examples of how you've done this? I think has been really important. So it just says, in the digital age, it's very easy to find a lot of information in a lot of places. There's in-person or real-time kind of live connections, I think can still be some of the most valuable.
I completely agree with you. Absolutely. Your network is obviously the biggest support system, and I still do exactly the same thing. Well, I think that is our last question. Do we have time for Q&A, or are we're good? Okay, let's take a couple of questions. Do we have a microphone? No? Project.
Can I grab the mic?
You can grab the mic. Come on the hot seat, please. Come on down.
I feel like
Hi.
zero thing has worked out.
Hi. So thank you both for being here, for leading this discussion. I work in culture and inclusion. I worked in marketing previously for a little bit over a decade. And I think for me, what I appreciate about events like today is I don't think topics like this matter to most organizations. 10, 15 years ago, at least they didn't invest in it. So I guess what I'm sensitive to when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion as a subject is I do think diversity as a term often encapsulates almost too many groups. And I think it's really crucial to call out more specific elements of diversity. We are in Atlanta right now with a city with a 60% Black population, and I think a lot of the energy behind DEI efforts in recent years was born out of a very serious tragedy that impacted a lot of Black Americans specifically. I think a lot of commitments were made to that community in 2020, and the bulk of them have not been delivered on. So I think if you look at, there was a USA Today article released recently that noted, I think, only 8 S&P 500 seats are held by Black executives, which is only up from 4 back in 2020. That's compared to 399 seats for white male executives. So I know I add that as context to my question, which is really just in the 4 years, since DEI efforts again, I think have been more center stage organizations. I want to ask for both of you, what are the two, or I guess, what are the proudest achievements or initiatives that you've been able to add to Georgia Pacific and to Audigent that specifically support Black communities?
Sure. So I mean, I'll say again that we've been on our journey. It started more than 4 years ago, but I would say obviously heightened over that time as we thought about really making sure that my organization, thinking about kind of inclusive marketing, has the insights and the knowledge and more exposure to best practices. And so I think just continuing, like I said, to build that knowledge and build a broader understanding of that within my entire organization and into how do we think about how our brands come to life for our consumers and diversity of our consumer group. So to me, that's still what I'm the proudest, is that it wasn't a response to some horrible things that happened a couple years ago. It was something that we're trying to build because we believe it's the right thing to do for the consumer and it's the right thing to do to make our brands relevant to the consumer.
And I think what you said a lot about your structure and the KPIs and the process you put in place, it's not posturing, it's action, right? It's measurable. And I think that's really important, rather than, what you see some brands do, which is like, oh yeah, we put money here. It's like, well, that's fine. But having that structure, that's more impactful. From Audigent's side, myself personally, outside of just the ERG that I started, that's now blueprint for other supports, ERGs within New York. About 2-3 months ago, I just joined the board of directors for Women Who Create. So focused on women of color, getting into advertising and creative, and so I was super excited to join, and my parents said, you're not a Black woman. I said, I know, Mom, thank you, thanks for that obvious statement. But I think Allie, being an ally, and the most important thing you give someone is your time, right? I don't need another accolade on my LinkedIn, it's just giving my time to help move the needle forward. So personally, at Audigent, I was really excited to be part of that organization. It does a lot of mentorship and scholarships, and hey, if anybody wants to donate, don't sue me. But it's a very important, for me, it's a very important part of where I invest my time outside of just everything I do to drive revenue for Audigent. Walking the walk, that's key.
To your point about just going ahead and starting it, who would you say title-wise are some of the people who are best to partner with, or who you partnered with to help move those things forward? Because I think sometimes we do want to do all of that, but it's hard to know who to incorporate. Obviously, it sounds like research and data were really instrumental, but are there certain people who sort of you partnered with to advocate for starting this process and moving forward?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it is something you want to make sure you've got that exposure and that awareness and support, because to be successful, you're going to need it. You need to make sure at your most senior levels they are recognizing that this is important and want to say this is where we want to spend our time and make sure that we're supporting it. So as I started, it did start in marketing and with consumer insights and just trying to think about how we could be more relevant and be the most relevant for consumers and meet them where they're at. So it started with us, but I partnered with HR, I partnered with our communications group, and then I had met with every single business leader. Because again, I can partner with them, we can all be supportive, but if the business isn't going to sign up and say, hey, we agree, we think this is important to drive our business, again, long term, I don't know that it's going to get the longevity that it needs. So there was a lot of conversations at the beginning, and making the case was really important. For some people, again, it's an easy, yes, it's the right thing to do, I'm supportive. But often, for my business leaders, they're like, understand it's important, but help me understand why I should prioritize my time here. And so being able to make that case, show them that we weren't, again, across the board brands delivering the way we needed to, and then making the case about how we thought it could impact their business. It required some time and conversation, but one of the things we did is we actually held a boot camp, and we brought in with our marketing leaders, HR, and some of our agency leaders, but also some of our business leaders. And that's where we unveiled our research results, which basically, help them understand, and we showed that we pulled up advertising I had worked on. And when I went back and looked at it with the lens of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I let that go out the door, because I wasn't thinking necessarily with the right lens when I did it. And so we used that just to not blame anybody, but say, we've all been part of this. Again, in our system, no one has bad intentions, but there's a lot of unconscious bias. I mean, obviously there's real bias, but there's a lot of unconscious bias where we even think we're making the right decisions, but we may not be making the right decisions because we didn't have the right people involved in the process to help us really think through, some of the implications of those decisions. So, like having that real-time conversation of, hey, here's why we think this is, where we're not doing well, and what we could do better. We brought in some external speakers to help with some connection and inspiration about what good looks like. And then we spent an afternoon saying, these are the processes that we wanted to implement differently. And so that was there had been some conversations before that. That was a really important session to try and bring everybody together.
Thank you so much.
I have a mic. Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
So great conversation. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Great conversation, so important to have. One question is, do you have an example of an insight you used recently in the campaign that really connects to diverse America that enabled you to do something different in the campaign you wouldn't have done before? So what's an example of great insight that activates that?
Sure. I think the most clear examples I'll use is for our Brawny brand. And Brawny, everyone knows Brawny. Brawny is often most recognized with the Brawny man, a big, burly lumberjack, who was a great brand icon.
Tell me more.
People love him for all sorts of reasons. He was a great brand icon, and that brand is known for strength. And the insight there was that strength comes in a lot of different ways. And for many years, the brand was representing strength as big, tough, burly, or really durable kind of paper towels, but there's emotional strength, there's resilience, and so we really wanted to recognize that, and that women may perceive strength to be very different than how men perceive strength. And so we launched a program called Strength Has No Gender, and it was celebrating the fact that strength comes in all shapes and sizes and in all forms, and we recognized some women who had done some pretty transformative things and really broken down barriers in a lot of different industries. And so we did that kind of for a number of years, every year recognizing some different women. And then probably the highlight of that program to me was the year we put a woman on the body pack and replaced the body man with a woman for that time.
Great example. Thank you.
I love that even more. That's incredible.
Yeah, go use Brawny.
Yeah, no, I do. If you saw my Amazon crush, I'll show you now that we're friends. I think we're about wrap up. We're getting the hook. We're good. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Laura. This is great. Hopefully now I'm one of the friends and colleagues you can now call in your group. And thank you, Brand Innovators, for giving us the opportunity to speak.